To a special edition of COS Live. I'm your host, Rita Peters. I'm the Senior Vice President for Legislative Affairs with Convention of States Action. And in just a few moments, we are expecting the Wyoming House Committee on Revenue to consider our Article 5 Convention of States legislation pending in Wyoming. It is SJ11, or Senate Joint Resolution 11 is our bill number in Wyoming. You can see the committee has already started. We are listed third on their agenda for today. And Convention of States Action co-founder and president Mark Meckler should be there in the committee room right now, and we're expecting to hear his testimony on our resolution. Now, Wyoming is in the driver's seat to become state number 20 to pass the COS resolution. It's the first and only state so far this year to pass through a legislative chamber. The Wyoming Senate claimed that honor earlier this month. Now the legislation has to make its way through the House for the state of Wyoming to officially join the movement. 19 other states have already passed our resolution, calling for an Article 5 convention for proposing amendments to the U.S. Constitution on 3 topics: fiscal restraints, term limits, and limits on federal scope and jurisdiction. We need 34 states to get to convention, so just 15 to go to call the first ever Article 5 convention for proposing amendments. How did we get to this point? Well, the Convention of States Wyoming volunteer team has been busy building support across the state and in the legislature. About 12,000 Wyoming residents have signed the Convention of States petition asking their state legislators to vote yes for COS. After passage through a Wyoming Senate committee last month, the Wyoming Senate voted 17-13 in favor of our application. Now, stay tuned after the conclusion of this committee hearing today, because we will have a recap and on-the-ground reaction. We're thinking Senior Regional Director Dave Schneider might be available for an interview, and possibly Mark Meckler as well. They are both on the ground there in Cheyenne. So we may be waiting for a few minutes for our resident to come up, but we want you to be able to watch as much of this hearing as possible. It's always good to see how the committees operate, how they talk about bills. This is a great privilege of being an American in the technology age, getting to actually watch and, in many cases, participate in the work of the legislature virtually from the comfort of your own home while things are unfolding, and to see how the legislators are thinking about and processing the information. We do expect this to be a lively debate and discussion in the Wyoming House Committee on Revenue today. So we're going to go ahead and take you right to the committee hearing so you can see all of what happens. I believe they're on their first bill now. We are third on the agenda, but again, the committee doesn't always go in order of what's on the agenda. They can take items in any order. So we're going to go ahead and take you to the committee meeting now, and stay tuned for the debate on the Convention of States resolution, which is SJ11.
Legal tender currencies. And the last one is requiring the state treasurer to hold and invest specie legal tender. It's a real simple bill. We originally started this bill out to where the localities, state and local taxes could be paid, you know, at the county assessor's office or treasurer's office in the counties. And, you know, we heard from the Department of Revenue how that created some issues with trying to set that up. So we amended that bill in committee, or it was after we heard that in the Senate committee, Revenue Committee, we amended that out of there. So we just made it strictly mineral taxes, severance taxes. The chances of that happening are probably slim to none right now, but what we really want to do is get things set up for the treasurer to be prepared if for whatever reason we have calamity in the financial markets, we have alternatives to trade with. So with that, I'll just kind of give you my little sales pitch statement here on why we're doing this bill. The main point of SF 101 is to prompt the state to get up to speed on how to deal in constitutional money, including holding gold as an asset to help the state hedge against its high exposure to the Federal Reserve note dollars, whose value has been recently plummeting. Everybody's aware of that, I'm sure, the ravages of inflation right now. The state treasurer's office, working with outside experts such as precious metals depositories, would establish a mechanism for the Department of Revenue so that it's capable of receiving mineral tax payments denominated in specie, gold and silver. These outside providers are experts in receiving, authenticating, exchanging, and storing gold and silver. If at a later
Well, since it looks like they might be on this bill for a few more minutes, I wanted to go ahead and take advantage of the opportunity to bring you some breaking news from Convention of States. It's a really busy week, and indeed today is an extremely busy day for Convention of States legislation around the nation. So bringing you up to speed, yesterday in Iowa, a Senate subcommittee advanced our resolution by a vote of 2-1. And this morning, just within the past hour, an Iowa House subcommittee did the same, advanced our resolution by a 2-1 vote. Michael Ferris was on hand in Des Moines to testify before both of those subcommittees and offered brilliant testimony, including explaining to the subcommittee members that he has not only litigated an Article 5 case in federal court, but he authored a Harvard Journal of Law and Public Policy law review article to definitively debunk the old myth that our Constitution was the product of a runaway convention. And that law review article details his painstaking research and all the evidence demonstrating that our founding fathers were not rogue delegates. They did, in fact, comply with their commissions, and our Constitution was not illegally adopted. So later today, now this is the really breaking part of the story because we just found out this morning that later today, the full committee of the Iowa House, the State Government Committee, will hold a hearing on our resolution there in Iowa at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time today. So stay tuned for that. Should be exciting. Now, in Iowa, the subcommittees actually take the testimony, and once the full committee meets to consider legislation, only members are allowed to speak. So there's no outside testimony before the full committee, but it will be extremely interesting to hear that full Iowa House State Government Committee discuss and debate on our Convention of States resolution. The Kansas House Committee on State and Federal Affairs recently voted 13-10 to advance our resolution. And in a really exciting and somewhat surprising move, the New Hampshire House Committee on State and Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs voted, it was a bipartisan majority there, a 13-5 vote to advance our resolution. And we're actually expecting the full New Hampshire House of Representatives to debate and vote on our resolution today. Now, y'all, the New Hampshire House of Representatives is the biggest state house in the country. They have 400 representatives there. And I can tell you our New Hampshire grassroots team is very excited. They've been working very hard to contact their state representatives and let them know that the people want a yes vote on Convention of States today. So stay tuned for more coverage on that later. And with that update, we'll take you back to the Wyoming House Revenue Committee, where we're expecting them to take up our resolution anytime now. Should be coming to you in the next few minutes. So Producer G will go back to that live stream.
I'll give you a little picture of the history of the dollar, and you can see how it's eroded. It's lost like 98% of its value since basically since 1913, when we got the Federal Reserve Bank. And then the other little graph just kind of shows how gold kind of goes in the inverse of the the debasement of our dollar. So it is, over time, it's a strong protection against the devaluation of our money.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to open this now. Just appreciate your presentation of the bill. And now, members of the committee, any questions of the sponsor? Or you want to go through specific parts of the bill with the sponsor? Anyone? Okay, we'll just start. Representative Bear and then Representative Northrop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator Ide, just when I look at paragraph V, or
Can you pass
5,
page
3, it says, if market conditions warrant investing in precious metal leases or bonds payable in precious metals, is there anything in your mind prohibiting that from happening right now? You mentioned that this is creating the opportunity. I know we need to have the structure and how we're going to value these metals and make sure that they're legitimately what we're saving them as. So do you see anything in statute now that keeps them from doing this?
Senator Ide.
Chairman Harshman, Representative Bear, it's a great question. The Wyoming Legal Tender Act, the original bill, I think basically would allow them to do that. It's a really good question. We've had some questions on that, talking to the treasurer, and they wanted more specific authority. And that's essentially what this amendment does, is gives the treasurer specific authority. So there's really no gray area there.
I want to follow up on that too. That was a question. I mean, I think we could. I mean, SLIB board, the IFC recommends it. SLIB board votes to do it.
Yeah.
Currently, but okay. Representative Northrop had a question.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question first off was, when you mentioned buying foreign coin, essentially, how do you know the quality of it? I mean, I understand it's stamped on it, but there certainly isn't any provision in the bill to be testing it to make sure it is of that quality. Though I'm not saying there's anything nefarious out there, but there certainly could be.
There is. Okay, Senator, go ahead.
Chairman Harshman, Representative Northrop, another great question. I think we'll have some testimony today that can speak in more detail to that. If we do store it, a lot of these precious metals, depositories, private, they have the ability and the technology and the people and the equipment to authenticate anything that the state would buy. And that's I think you'll hear some good testimony. That's a really good question, because everybody's worried about, counterfeit gold with tungsten in the middle of it. And, if you're dealing with the right people, when you say foreign coin, like that original legal tender bill, it's basically the US minted coin, or like a Canadian maple leaf, or, a Cougaran from Africa. Those are the state legal tender coins, which is the same as our American Eagles and American Buffaloes.
Okay,
If that
no
helps.
questions. Representative Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question. Do any other states allow this now, or do you know how many?
Go ahead, Senator Ide.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman, Representative Zwanitzer. So another interesting question, especially right now. Missouri just passed out of their Senate a very similar bill. Their bill actually required the treasurer to hold a minimum of 1%. Our bill does not. I mean, we could be in compliance with this bill if the treasurer just, not that we want him to, but buy a single 1 ounce gold coin, and they would basically be doing what this bill says. So Missouri just passed that out of the Senate. It's kind of where we are right now, essentially. Montana, they're copying almost our bill. A lot of states are really looking at this. I think there's 22 states that or no, there's like 33 states that have limited taxes on precious metals. So I heard right now I don't want to give you a number, but there's like 13 to 20 states right now working on similar bills like this, just because of what's going on in the country and the world for that matter on, just money printing, debt going on, unbacked currencies, and the law of gravity, they can't go on forever when you get that much debt.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, any questions down there? I'm going to keep moving down here. Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, you have chosen this mine product severance taxes. I don't see any other taxes. Is there a particular reason that tax was chosen and not other taxes in this particular bill?
Go ahead, Senator.
Chairman Harshman, Representative Bear, another great question. So we started this bill out with state and local taxes. We amended it out of there. It would look real cumbersome from the get-go until the treasurer really knows and the Department of Revenue knows how to deal with it. And that's why we extended this date, or we put a date of January 2024. So they had time to get up to speed and figure out how to get all of the mechanics and the plumbing in place to make these things work. But it's something that would be nice to do later on. I mean, initially I can see why the Department of Revenue was worried about that, because it is going to take time to get all of the counties up to speed if anybody ever wants to pay in gold and silver, or if they have to pay in gold and silver in the future. So this is just kind of getting things ready. It's not something that I think it's more on paper right now and getting the treasurer up to speed, and then them figuring it out. And then if things needed to be amended in the future for towns and cities and counties, that would be a good thing to do. I like it in the bill just so we have that option, but we did take it out.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're about, but you're here. So if we have further questions, we'll
Okay.
call you back up. Thank you.
Well, we are hearing word from the grounds there in Wyoming that this committee hearing might take a little bit longer than we had initially anticipated. So even though we are third on the agenda, we're hearing that they could take quite some time on the other bills, and it could even be a couple of hours before they get to our Convention of States Resolution SJ11. So we're going to go ahead and end the live stream for now, but just ask you to stay tuned, because once they start back up again, we do plan to come back on with live stream coverage. We're also, again, waiting for a debate on the floor of the New Hampshire House. And we've got an Iowa House State Government Committee hearing on our resolution later this afternoon. So stay tuned, and we expect lots more live coverage today